Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Will's webinars, the first of the decade, the first of 2020, and what a guest we've got to kick us off. So we have the wonderful Evette Rose.
Hello, thank you for having me, and hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are.
All right, so we're really looking forward to this webinar this evening, guys. So for those of you that haven't joined us before and those of you that have joined us before, just going to explain exactly how this is going to work. So first things first, if you aren't already, please join the Make It Happen Facebook group. I'm going to put the link in the chat in a moment. Now, the reason I want you to join the group is because we're going to make this webinar really interactive. When I get the link, here we go. And we're going to make this webinar really interactive. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions that come up from you guys. And rather than me just asking about the questions, I want you guys to be able to ask them too. And the way that you're going to be able to do that is via, on the Facebook group, there is a thread, which is the webinar thread. Hopefully you can see it on your screen now. If you post any questions on that thread, I'm going to be monitoring it throughout the whole evening. And yeah, I'll look to bring up as many of those questions as I possibly can. So if we could just do a quick check by going to that Facebook group. If you're not in the Facebook group, I'll put the link there. Please ask your questions on the Facebook group. And if you are listening and you can hear us and see us okay, please just comment on the thread now saying, yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yes, we can see you, so that we know everything is working wonderfully. So if you don't mind just taking a minute, guys, to do that, and then we will get things underway. So yeah, just if you can go to the Facebook group, head to the official webinar thread. We make sure that everyone can hear us and see us all okay, and then we can get rocking and rolling with this evening. Perfect. So people saying they can hear us and see us. So if you don't do Facebook, then I'll let you off. You can use your questions here. Yeah, so we can get going. So I've got Evette as my guest this evening, and we're going to be talking about how to heal your emotional body. Now, I just want to, I'm not sure if she's online yet, but SJ, if you're online, I want to thank you specifically, because it was you that introduced me to Evette's work and introduced me specifically to this. Now, this is not your average book, guys. I mean, it's 740. This one's more, right? This one's 765. This might be a revised edition. 800 pages thick, this book, which is, like I say, not your average book, and it is full, absolutely full of wisdom. SJ introduced me to it. So this is one of your books of it. So for people that maybe don't know too much about you and they've just been enticed by the talk topic that we've been promoting, please tell them, more specifically metaphysical anatomy, just to kick us off.
I just lost you there for a few seconds. Did you ask me to talk about what is metaphysical anatomy?
Yes, let's know about you specifically. So people that maybe don't know about you, the people that maybe don't know about you, tell us a little bit about you and what metaphysical anatomy is. Because I know that's one of your books, and you've got a number of them, but that's one of them, right?
So, hi everyone, I am from South Africa, and I grew up in Namibia, Australia now as well, and I traveled the globe. And as I was traveling the world, as Will already showed you here, I started to notice with people, when I work with them through ailments, that people from different parts of the country and the world, regardless of your cultural background and histories, who shared certain ailments also shared a similar trauma points. And I was so fascinated by this that I thought there has to be something in that. So I started documenting every single session that I did. I've worked with more than 6,000 people one-on-one. And I just started seeing all these algorithms and these patterns between these people. And I realized, wow, if I release trauma a certain way in a person that, for example, has a specific ailment, and I do that with someone in Australia, and then I go do it with someone in the UK, you get very similar results in terms of the healing progress. And that's when I realized that our body, our biological makeup is the same universally. Someone says they can't hear me. Oh,
right.
no.
Let's before we get firing, because there's loads of great stuff you're sharing already. Let's see if we can make sure that this
Thank you, Kevin and Anne, for letting us know.
Okay. Can anyone hear Evette, guys? If you could just let us know, please, that would be wonderful.
Liz said yes. John said yes. Teresa,
okay.
yes.
So Kevin and Anne, can you hear me? So they can hear.
They can hear you.
Okay. So let's carry on. Hopefully you guys, I don't know if it's a sound thing, but if you can hear me,
we'll have a replay, right, Will?
There will be a recording available for.
Perfect.
I just want to make sure that I've stopped sharing the screen now, so it should have less lag. So yeah, let's see how we get on.
All right. So what I was saying, we biologically all share the same makeup, which means that we record stress the same way, which means that the body will release stress the same way. And if it's the same for me, it will be the same for you as well. And that's when I realized, by working out this algorithm of how the body stores trauma and how to release it from those points, it works for basically everyone. So that was the beauty and what I noticed in this work, and just the passion behind sharing that. And the reason why I got into this was by pure accident. If you told me 10 years ago you would be an author speaking and teaching, I would laugh at you. I was a complete atheist 10 years ago. But I was also an atheist on a very bad path. My life was a mess, as it is when you suppress your trauma and your stuff and you build coping mechanisms. Mine was extremely destructive. And I woke up just one morning and I called my manager and I said to her, listen, on a voice message, because it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I was the kind of person that would get up 4 o'clock in the morning, have a cigarette, have a coffee. My gym was in my house so that I would save time to not have to go to the gym because I was so punctual. And I will do cardio for 3 hours. I'll have another cigarette, another coffee, shower, and I'll be at the office 8 o'clock. And so this was when I lived in Australia. And, one day I just woke up and I was sinking into a depression. And I woke up that morning and I called my manager and I left the voice message on her phone and I hand over all the work to whoever needed to do everything, because I was doing 3 people's jobs. I was a workaholic as well, amongst many other things, addictive personality. And I just decided I was going to take my life that morning. That was it. And one thing that stopped me from when I really started thinking of how I'm going to do it, I thought, hang on, there's people around me that's genuinely happy. They really, truly feel and experience joy. And I thought, well, if they can have it, then why can't I have it? And these were people who didn't necessarily have the best life, but they were happy. And I thought, okay, at that point it was 6 o'clock already. So an hour has passed with me back and forth in my head what I'm going to do. And I'm lighting another cigarette. I got my vodka poured in, my we could have called screwdriver back then, because I was an alcoholic at that point as well. I was 22 and I was sitting there and I looked at the computer, right? I looked at the computer. Back then we had these big, dull, clunky computers. And I sat there and I typed into Google, how to be happy. Because that was my question. They can have it. I can't. And I felt so unresourceful in that moment. I had no idea where to go. And then I saw crystals. I saw Neil Donald Walsh. I saw Doreen Virtue. I saw angels. And I'm thinking, oh, hell no. If this is the answer, then I don't think so. Because remember, my mindset was not open to receiving the information that was coming through. And I decided that if I really want to make a change in my life, if I'm really so desperate, if I really don't have an answer, then who am I to question this? And that's exactly what I did. So I plunged, I dived right in. I started buying books about angels and crystals and, all these things that were so beyond my scope, right? I went from being a Christian to being an atheist, just to give a little bit of a background there. Talk about overcompensation. And so that's what happened. And my life started to change. And then 3 months in my journey, I quit my office job and I started my own business, because it's just, it was such an amazing journey that I had, and I wanted to share it with everyone else.
Fantastic.
And that's how my journey started.
So your journey literally, and I always love hearing these stories, because people that do the work sort of in our industry of working with others, there's normally nobody ever just goes, oh, well, that's what I always wanted to be as a kid. That's what I wanted to be at school. That's always what I wanted to do. People always have a journey of how they've ended up there. So if you're 22 years old, you got to the point where you were so depressed, you got to the point you were suicidal. And like you say, whatever it was that called you to your laptop, to Google, thank God for Google, how to be happy. And that was then the catalyst that then sent you off on this journey. One of the things that I'm curious about, I'm going to ask this question initially because what was the moment, or what was the thing particularly that made you go from being an atheist to then actually being more, would you say you're religious, or would you say you're spiritual? What would you describe yourself as?
So I'm going to answer your first question first. And that's how I switched from being an atheist. And being an atheist started from the fact that, I had to read the Bible as punishment. So my association with Christianity and with the Bible and with religion was toxic. I hated it because that was, my way of, having to suffer and all these things that I just hated to do. I was a very active child. If anything, I was always outside. You would never catch me in the house. I would find some things to make something out of. I was just incredible. But to sit inside of a house and to read a Bible for punishment was really tough. And so I also had a very abusive and alcoholic father, and also self-medicated drug addict. So for him to sit there drunk as a skunk with the Bible under his arm and telling me that God is going to punish me for doing all these things, I'm sitting there and I'm like, really, God, this is how it's going to work? Where are you? Where are you involved with this? So it distorted my sense of self and my perspective of what religion should be, because of the influences from outside. And so I overcompensated completely when I finally left the house, and I was like, yeah, I'm free, and no one to judge me, no one to tell me I'm going to burn in hell. Now I can do whatever I want. I'm creating my own life now, because values and beliefs are there to support you, that you learn from your parents. But I also believe that there comes a point in your life where you have to graduate from certain beliefs that are not in alignment with you. And, that part of me that was fighting against these values and beliefs, it was destroying me. And that's showing you that it's time to let go of these values and beliefs that you've outgrown. You've graduated from that, so let it go. And I happily let go of it. And so I transitioned, but I also overcompensated because of the pain points that I had, the wounded, unresolved parts and aspects of me. And so I became an atheist basically to spite my dad. I was kind of that person, if you slap me, I'll slap you back. So I did that. That was my attitude towards my dad. So it was more, being an atheist was more a decision rather than an actual belief system, because ultimately religion is a lifestyle. Spirituality is a lifestyle. Being an atheist is a lifestyle, right? And also believing in whatever it is, it becomes a lifestyle because it's part of you and your expression of who you are, which pours over into every single aspect of your life. It's not just a mindset, it's a life. So I realized that in order for me to change my life, I have to change the ripple effect and the expression of what is contributing and adding to this. And I realized that if I'm going to limit myself to believing in just absolutely nothing, then what do I expect to be given to me? Nothing. So that's where I really decided, I don't have an answer.
Oh, I'm not sure what's happening there. Guys, can you just let me know, have you just lost a bet? Because I've lost a bet. Okay, let me drop her a message.
I'm sorry about that.
You're back.
It was so funny. I saw everyone's like, no, where did Evette go? Where did Evette go? We lost her. I appreciate the care, everyone. I'm back. Okay. So what I was saying is that I had no answer. So who am I now to question, thinking that I have all the answers, because I didn't. Right? So I had to open myself up to a new way of believing, a new way of seeing things. And I allowed myself to test this. I played a game, right? Instead of resisting it or hating the process, I thought, let's make it a game. Let's be playful. Let's pretend that we're going to do this. You don't have to become it. Let's just see what happens. And the best thing in my life ever that could have happened. And that was healing. That was change. That was feeling genuine happiness. Nothing forced. It just flowed. And I thought, I'll be damned. So that was the first answer to your first question, Will. Then you asked me a second question there.
So yeah, I was curious as to what was it that was the change. So obviously, I completely understand, given the circumstances, as why you would have an atheist belief. But what was it about that journey of being 22, that decision, going on Google, to then made you think, actually, I believe in X, and what is X? Because people have lots of different beliefs, like you say, whether they're religious beliefs or just their beliefs. What was the catalyst that made you go down the route to what you maybe believe now, or what that has evolved to?
The catalyst for me was Neil Donald Walsh. And that was the book Conversations with God.
Mm-hmm.
And that opened up to me that what if there is generally something outside of me that's been shouting and screaming at me and I just haven't been listening? And I thought, okay. And that's how Doreen Virtue came into the equation. I'm like, okay, well, this woman's talking about angels. Okay, I'm sure maybe I have angels. Everyone seems to have guides. So maybe I have guides that haven't quite given up on me. I don't know. Did they retire? Are they still there? Where are they? And so I started learning, what is this? What is this things outside of me that's supposed to be talking to me? And so by just shifting your focus to what it is that could potentially be there means that you open up the sphere to that, to receive that. But if you don't believe in it, if you're not open to it, it's not going to come in. Right? So, and that's what I realized. And that's also what that was the game changer for me, is when I became playful and I stopped trying to control a process that's not meant to be controlled. Because, my control issues was through the roof. And so, I really had to massage it. I really had to let go of that. And that is when my mindset started to expand. I allowed myself to receive whatever needed to come in, and I had to take the judgment out of that. And that's when things really started to flow for me. That's when I really started to get, confirmation that there is something outside of me that could potentially be, even if it's a mirror expression of me. It doesn't matter at the end of the day what it is, because ultimately this cosmic mess or party, whatever it is that's going on, we're all connected anyway. So even if it's outside of me, it's still a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the holographic universe is forever going on.
I love that. There's a video that someone sent me a while back, and it's only about 5 minutes long, by Michael something Beckwith. I can't remember his full name. It's called The 4 Stages of Spiritual Awakening. And it's life happens to you, life happens by you, life happens through you, life happens as you. And for me, I've always been a guy that I can do it. Like, I'm doing it. And if I can't make it happen, then it can't happen. And I had this moment when I watched this video. I actually watched it 10 times back to back, just going over it over and over, and it just resonating with me perfectly at that point, which is really interesting. Why, when I learn people that have gone from sort of not from, like you said, being atheist or not believing in some sort of higher power, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, believing it, I'm always interested in what that moment is. So thank you for sharing that. So let's get stuck into the original topic. So we've got a really interesting topic with lots of people that are sat here eagerly waiting. Right, we'll get to the main event. We love hearing about it. Get to the main event. So we said how to heal your emotional body. So let's just start with the obvious question. What is an emotional body?
So an emotional body is something, this is the physical body that we have. So physically, we have muscles, we have skin, we have bones, we have tendons. Yeah, you see, perfect. That's a very good example. Now, the emotional body is the part where the physical body also stores and holds emotions. Emotions has a frequency. And you are 60-70% water. And we know how water can also can hold, memories, how emotions can change the frequency of water molecules as well. That's one aspect of that. Now, healing the emotional body means that you heal the cellular memory of the emotions that's been stored in certain parts, which is universally the same for everyone. And also now when you start adding an ailment to it or an injury to it, then it changes the meaning of it slightly. But even though the meaning changes, the way that the meaning changes, it's the same for everyone globally. So it gets slightly more complex, but it's still split into very accurate, structured explanations. So the emotional body, for example, is, when you get really angry or if you feel really, really sad, sometimes that sadness can come in the heart area. But it doesn't always come necessarily at the heart area for someone else. They might feel sadness, their back might start to get tense, but the heart feels perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so there's a reason for that. It doesn't necessarily, we always think that the heart's all about, love, giving and receiving, but the heart actually has also a lot to do with emotional, sentimental values and memories. Because the beauty here where it gets interesting is that the heart actually can think and act independently to the brain. And the reason for that is that we have neurotransmitters in the heart, in the gut as well, but in the heart it's the strongest. It's actually stronger than in the brain, the electromagnetic field that pulsates through that. Now, what happens is just on a side note for everyone to note, if you actually take a piece of the heart tissue and you give it to a brain surgeon to put it under a microscope, he'll think it's from the brain. That is how similar it is. Now, what happens is when you think of a thought, and the heart can also feel emotions, memories sparking up between the neural pathways. What happens is that an electromagnetic field shoots off that creates an electromagnetic energy. And what happens with that electromagnetic field is that it pulsates outward. Now, this electromagnetic field holds and is programmed with your emotional state. And that is why and how, when someone feels an emotion, you can't see their face, but you can sense, you can feel something is wrong. That is your electromagnetic fields communicating, completely unaware, without your intention to connect to them. Now, this electromagnetic field, you know how the holographic universe works. It comes from in and it goes out and it goes back in. Now, if you constantly energize that thought, what happens is that this negative emotion and thought can also now, it's almost like it regurgitates constantly in your field as well. Now, because we also have certain emotional points in the body, that we hold certain emotions, that emotion that you're thinking or feeling will become programmed constantly into that part of your body. So for example, let's say resentment, right? Everyone can relate to resentment. Now, when you look at resentment and you look at the absolute highest expression of resentment, meaning like over generations, deep resentments be felt to the point where your biological makeup and predisposition for the emotion resentment has heightened so much that something happens in your life and it just one thing and it sets off, like the explosion button, and your biological makeup explodes because it can't cope and handle the threshold of trying to suppress the resentment. That is when the resentment will start to roll over into an ailment. So depending on the emotional stress that's been constantly repeated, not just in your life, but your ancestors as well. Watch Ghost in Your Genes. There's a BBC documentary on YouTube. It's an amazing source to help you to understand how epigenetics also works. It also spares me a lot of explanation. So what now happens is, say, for example, there's resentment within a family dynamic. That resentment can either go to your stomach as an ulcer if it's with your mom. It can either go to your kidneys if it's towards your father, or if there's any type of physical or sexual abuse. Or it can go to your skin, for example, if someone shouted and screamed at you a lot, if there was a lot of verbal abuse. So this is how these aspects can start to form and being held in the emotional body, because the emotional body has now hit its threshold in terms of holding and storing a certain type of emotion, because everything in life has its limits, and that includes the body. Even though it's non-physical, it has a limit of the intensity what it can store until the electromagnetic field of that starts to change. It's almost like it mutates and it creates a physical reaction in the body.
So that you've just mentioned, so you talk about the limit. So when the emotional body gets to its limit, it then creates the physical. Correct.
Now,
which we recognize as.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Which we recognize as illness and disease, right?
Correct.
Cool.
Correct.
So
please continue.
No, go on.
No, it's okay. I think I wanted to say something, but I lost my trail of thought, but it will come back. So I was
going to say that leads really nicely onto sort of the first point that we were going to talk about, which was how to listen to your body's messages. So We're talking about the emotional body, getting to that point of getting to the emotional body. So do we have to, based on what you said there, do we have to wait until we get to the point where we have the illness and the disease to know we're at that threshold? Or is there a way of understanding that we're getting close to that threshold, or that threshold is sort of getting close to its limit before we have the illness and disease.
Correct. So the body's only way of communicating with us is through pain. Pain is a call to action. So, but you also really want to get to the point where you can realize what's going on before you hit that place of pain. So that's where I use the word discomfort. So you either have physical discomfort or emotional discomfort. And the moment that you feel a sense of discomfort, that is when it's time to listen. That is not the time to go grab a glass of wine. That's not the time to go grab a joint or a cigarette, or, to go exercise excessively for 6 hours and get addicted to the dopamines, which means that you have to run around like a hamster in a wheel in order to get back that positive release. It's about listening the moment when there's a sense of discomfort. And you ask yourself, can I live with this discomfort for another week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Well, if it's still there for a year, would I accept that? Well, no. Who wants to live a life of discomfort? Right? So you also have to know and understand and actually have conscious awareness of boundaries, of what you're going to allow yourself to tolerate. We always think of boundaries as saying no to someone, or where's my limitations with certain things? Well, no, you need to have boundaries with yourself as well. Right? So that's also kind of where that starts, is that self-discipline of learning to knowing and understanding when you feel a little bit of anxiety, maybe, okay, say for example, there's some anxiety. Well, let's look at what the anxiety is, because that is not a normal, natural state. Our bodies are designed to be naturally harmonious. We're not designed to live in the state of distress, because if we were, we wouldn't have all these ailments. Because now we also have environmental factors coming into play. Our environment's becoming more toxic, which means that we don't need such a high emotional distress or trauma in order to reach a certain heightened level before it turns into an ailment. Now what can actually happen is that the environment can kind of like take that place, right? So if you're going to be living, on a street where there's so much smog and toxicity, and you're breathing in that air on a regular basis, that level of toxicity is going to trigger the most weakest psychosomatic point in the body, and that's actually where you can start to have an ailment. We know the toxicity in the pollution of our environment is very connected to cancer. Right? Just as an example. So we also have to be more mindful now, more of our health even. It's not just emotional health, but these two have to go together.
Yeah, it's really fun. What you said there, I think, is absolutely key, and it comes back to recognizing that. So I talk a lot about, if people want to change if they want to get healthier, typically they need to do two things. They need to move more and eat better. If you're talking physically healthy, those two are the basic things. And when people talk about their mental health or emotional health, I say it's typically two things, that still the same two things. They need to think differently and act differently. So for example, in that situation, like you say, they need to be maybe thinking differently, but then acting differently, getting out of an environment, or like you say, if they're uncomfortable, whatever it is they're doing that's giving them the anxiety, be doing something differently, or changing their belief system around the anxiety. So therefore their sort of threshold is able to increase, because they're able to deal with that tension. Would you say that's that fits with your way of thinking around that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And also the one aspect that I just kind of want to squeak in there, because I know a lot of people would be able to relate to it, and that's numbness. And I really want to just bring this up, because a lot of people think, people who are maybe angry or very aggressive, they're very confident, they're very, that's actually this person is very desensitized, for example. Sometimes someone goes through such a traumatic time and they look like they're gracefully moving through it, but they're actually not. A lot of that can be numbness, or a state of dissociation, as I would call it in my technique. So what happens is that these states of dissociation and numbness becomes a safety mechanism. It becomes a coping mechanism that a person would revert to every time in a state of distress, which means that mentally they don't necessarily connect to the stress because they mentally numb themselves from that. But the emotional body is constantly and always taking the better of it. Always. Yeah. Subconscious mind even, it's constantly taking in information, even when you sleep, even when you're completely lights out on an operating table. That's been proven now. Your subconscious mind never stops.
I love that. So again, this is sort of almost like this is perfectly designed this way to roll into what we're talking about next. So people sitting there thinking, oh my God, what do I do? Like, I might have all this stuff going on. I don't want to get ill. I don't want the diseases. I don't want the negative emotions anymore. We said that we're going to talk about how to heal that negative thought. So what's your process for healing a negative thought? And it's really interesting, the language you've used there. So you said how to heal a negative thought, not how to think differently necessarily, but how to heal the negative thought. So I'm really interested in that.
And you know, you can tell someone to think, you know, differently. Positive affirmations are amazing, but they also say it takes you 20 to 21 days to really start to think differently if you constantly repeat something. And my whole life, I get bored really fast, and hence why I have so many different projects constantly running simultaneously. And so I also love shortcuts, but shortcuts that work. And I was thinking, okay, so 21 days, that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to do that. I just don't have the discipline for that. It's too long. There has to be a different alternative, because I always believe that there's an opposite polarity to everything in life. Where there's darkness, there's light. Where there's happiness, there's sadness. So if there's a problem, there's a solution. It's always there. If you can come up with a thought of thinking of and you perceive it as a problem, then you just create the opposite polarity of that. There has to be a solution. So what I did was I was thinking, okay, let's dive into this research. Let's dig in, because creating modalities and understanding and observing the body, that's my specialty. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let's put myself to the test here. And what I realized by just looking at my research and my paperwork and just my experiences with clients, remember what I said, that when you think a thought, you fire off the electromagnetic fields in the neural pathways, and it holds it sends that out into the electromagnetic field. What also now happens is that we also have different brainwave states that we go in and out of. Now, the alpha brainwave state is a state that's very calming, very soothing. It kind of like really balances you. But what it also does is it resets the atomic nervous system in the body. So if you're in a state of fight or flight, inducing the alpha brainwave state is amazing. I normally teach that to people who struggle with panic. I just released a video about 5 effective steps of how to deal with a panic attack immediately, like literally how to stop it in its tracks, regardless of where you are. And so, but what I realized exactly with also just panic attacks, for example, even that's also a thought processing form that's constantly repeating. And the body gets saturated with this panic, because the moment you think of a thought, it creates a biochemical reaction in the body as if though it's happening, because now it's checking out in the subconscious mind, well, she's thinking this, what do I remember, or what do I'm comparing with this thought or this emotion? And it digs up all the trauma points associated with that. So consciously, you don't necessarily remember what's happening, which is called an implicit memory. However, your emotional body remembers and your emotional body reacts, and that's called a panic attack. You have no conscious awareness as to why you're having a panic attack, but your emotional body does. And that can be induced with a thought. So that's also the power of healing a thought. Of course, you want to look at more in the deeper traumas, because a thought is an expression and a symptom of a traumatic event. But sometimes a thought can be so dominant that sometimes one negative thought can be related to a singular traumatic emotional event. And just to define for everyone out there what I mean by traumatic event is, it means that something in your life happened that you were not emotionally able to overcome to regain your quality of life. It's in a moment where you felt completely unsafe, loss of control, and powerless, like completely powerless.
So sort of my background is very NLP focused. So, and I know a few of the guys that will be listening to this are also sort of schooled in NLP. So I would liken that to what you're saying, is that subconsciously created an anchor or an association with the thing, whatever that thing is, and the trauma in that moment. And it could be just that one thing could be so strong. If you've got a heightened state, you create that anchor, and until that is that anchor's broken and you see it from a different perspective.
I know NLP really well, so absolutely, yes, that's correct. That's correct. So, but here's the thing. It can even be a sound. It can be a smell that was present at the moment of trauma, and you subconsciously associated it with the painful time. And so here you're just walking in the street, you're smelling something, and bam, it triggers the memory, and you're having a panic attack, or you're starting to feel really stressed.
But you don't know.
Correct. And so, but the emotional body does, and that's where you feel the panic, that's where you feel the stress, because that's where it starts to be triggered and stirred, is the cellular memory of that, where it's being stored in the body. It's not just cognitively in neural pathways where we think it is. Remember, the heart has its own memories, the gut has its own memories. 80% of serotonin is also produced in the gut. So if your diet is crappy, then, well, good luck popping a pill for depression, because that's not where the problem is. It's not in the brain, it's in the gut, right? So now when you look at healing a negative thought, what you want to do is to induce the alpha brainwave state. And how you do that is to breathe in the mouth, out the nose, deep breaths. And you're going to do that 10 times, really deep breaths. And as you're breathing, you think of the negative thought, you have an awareness of that. And on the last breath, when you breathe in the mouth, you hold the breath for as long as you can, and you energize the opposite of the negative thought. Constantly feel it, see it, sense it, just constantly reprogram that. And that's how you release the stress, because it's resetting firstly the atomic nervous system, which is what blocks the body from receiving new information, because it's so tense, it doesn't have the capacity to bring in new information. So now it's relaxed. Okay, yes, let it come in. Because if you can think of it, then it means that you have a genetic predisposition for it in your biological makeup. Otherwise, you can't think of it. So don't tell me, if you're born depressed, that you don't know what happiness is like. You do. It's in your biological makeup. Now it's a matter of finding it. It's there.
I love the fact that you said it's the breath work that you use to reset that and get to alpha state. It's the first time I've heard actually that you can use breath work to get to an alpha state. I do quite a lot of Wim Hof breathing. I'm sure you're familiar with Wim Hof.
Yes.
And we run Wim Hof workshops, and Emma, I don't know if she's online, but Emma is one of Wim's trainers, and she comes over and she does workshops with our guys here, and we do the whole breathing exercise and the ice bath and all that. But my favorite part is the breathing. You know, it's unlike anything else. And I've said to people many times before, is I have out of body experiences. It's really weird just from the breathing alone. So I can completely see what you mean in terms of how it would and could now, I'm sort of seeing it and understanding it from what you're saying, get you into an alpha state. So
and
brainwave state.
Exactly. And then the theta state you will use for, when you work with someone that's been abused, when you work with the delta, when you work with physical pain. That's in my level 1 course. There's 2 levels, but that's what I would teach in my online courses, where you can learn that. So, and it's amazing if we just know where and how to tap into the body, how you can change these things. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I love that. So that was an example. So like you say, if people feel, and they don't know what necessarily the trauma is, but they can do that exercise, is that the way that, or have you got a multitude of different ways that are sort of foundation level, let's call it, in terms of how to heal the negative thought, or is that the core one that you tend to go to? Is that your go-to?
This is actually something that I love to use when I'm in public or when I teach someone who doesn't necessarily have any tools to use. What I actually normally work with is the limbic system. We go straight into the hippocampus, the emotional brain. We go straight into the reptilian mind, where our core instinctive responses are, because emotions and instincts fire together. And what fires together?
Wires together.
Correct. And so now what happens is that these emotional parts also get stored in the emotional body. So it's constantly anchored in everywhere, including the atomic nervous system, which is also storing and holding the emotional and the instinctive stress and responses that doesn't always necessarily get for you that you actually get to act out on, because it misfires sometimes, especially if 2 instinctive responses coming up. The body panics and it doesn't know which one to act out on, and it goes into submission. And now what happens is that the body stays in a state of distress, which means that your stress hormone cycles, which resets every 20 minutes, normally it doesn't, by 20 minutes, you haven't calmed down. So now you have a new stress cycle starting. So you're constantly in a state of distress, chronic fatigue. So you know what I mean? So now what's happening is that the body becomes stuck in these cycles and these states of distress. And now life goes on, right? Your body is going to stay in that state, but you have to keep living your life. So now new traumatic events happen, new stressful events happen, and it adds and it adds and it adds to the point where the atomic nervous system can't cope with it anymore. That's why we have breakdowns, we have meltdowns, we have people start hyperventilating. That's when we also have panic attacks, because the body is hitting its threshold in terms of what it can hold. Now, in metaphysical anatomy, for example, what we do is we work on specific points in the biology, including also with the master cell. And we work on these points to release the trauma the way that it was stored. And the beauty of what I designed this technique and why I'm so passionate about it is that I don't believe that you have to relive your trauma. You do not. Because what happens is, if the memory that you relive is traumatic enough, you can actually create what is called neuroplasticity, which means that you can create new neural pathways based on that traumatic event. Or you strengthen neurogenesis. We always think, oh, neuroplasticity is so great, it's so positive. Neurogenesis, wow, but it can flip the opposite. It can flip the opposite, and people don't understand that. And so, you don't have to relive the trauma. Secondly, you don't even need to know what it is to permanently release it. You don't need to know that. What you do need to know is some emotions. And if you say, I can't feel my emotions, well, there's easy ways to find, to get your way around that, because ultimately you can. It's just a dissociative state. And if you really know your work, then you know how to get someone out of a dissociative state. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, that's how I designed and created this work, because you really want to make this work comfortable for people that's been raped or beaten to oblivion, or someone who lost a loved one in a traumatic car accident, or even someone that's been through a traumatic car accident. It's like people say, the medical profession say that, post-traumatic stress disorder is permanent damage to the brain. And I'm like, yeah, what just happened to that concept of neurogenesis and neuroplasticity that we've been talking about? So it's like, if you really truly just understand the brain, understand the body, and understand how to nurture it and how it can actually restore itself. They always said neuroplasticity and neurogenesis is only possible in the limbic system. It's possible in the neurocortex as well. And that just tells me, well, that's now been discovered just recently. It must be somewhere else as well. It can't just be there. And so based on these points, and also tapping into secondary gain, because secondary gain plays a huge role, meaning the ways that we've learned to cope with pain, to cope with trauma, that can also hold you back because of the benefits, hidden benefits. Even if it's 1%, when life is bleak and you find 1 point of positivity, you're going to hold on to that. The body feels that little bit of relief, and it associates it with an escape, which is what it needs. And then it hooks onto that coping mechanism. And so for anyone out there listening right now, for you to find immediately what your secondary gain and hidden benefits, your problems are, ask yourself this question. Whatever it is that you want to heal or shift in your life, ask yourself, what in my life will change that I am not ready to change if I did heal this issue right now? Or repeat that. What in my life will change that I'm not ready to change if this issue in my life shifts right now? That answer, that is what you work with before you even try to heal your life.
So sorry, just one more time. So what in my life will change that I'm not ready to change?
If I did heal this, whatever it is that you want to work on, if you did heal that today.
Yeah.
That's my $1 million secondary gain questions. There's people out there running today's events about it, and I'm like, come on.
So I said to you before that there's a lot of work that I've done and I've studied, and one of the big pieces that I've learned from John DeMartini, who we were discussing before we went live, is secondary and tertiary gains. And people don't. Wow. You can have one that, because it's like scales, right? You can have scales. Exactly. You have one downside that you think's a bad thing, but if you have lots of, it doesn't need to be lots, it could be one very heavy secondary gain, but lots of, it's like having a brick and grains of sand. You could have lots of grains of sand, lots of small secondary gains as well, that actually throw it out of kilter, which means that you ultimately, without consciously thinking it, still want the pain that you wanted to get rid of.
Yeah. Also remember that we kind of have our biological makeup working against us just slightly, because we are biologically designed to think negative, because that negative state induces a state of suspicion. We're designed to mistrust everything. We're designed to question everything. Now, it is also this biological state of using a certain way of survival that we needed a few hundred years ago that we don't need anymore, because our limbic system and frontal cortex are developing so fast It's almost like our biological makeup, the instinctive responses, and how the body is physically programmed is having trouble keeping up with it. We're almost literally outsmarting ourselves because of how fast we are developing with our environment as well. So we're almost like distorting ourselves a little bit, and it makes it 10 times worse by not listening to body, by not understanding how the body functions and how the mind connects and how everything plugs together. So
love it.
Just
love
throw
it.
that one in there as well. So it's really understanding that this negativity is to embrace it, let it be there. It's okay for it to be there, but just understand that you can also be in control of it and not be controlled by it.
Love that. Love that. Love that. So I'm going to ask, because for some reason, whenever I touch the chat, it's causing me an issue. If someone would be kind enough, someone's posted Evette's YouTube link. If someone could copy that and put that in on the official thread for people, and if anyone did write it down, I have written it down, so I'll post it in the comments later. Margaret's asked, it's what in my life will change that I'm not ready to change if I did heal that right now. So if someone else has written it down, if you could put that in the official comments for me. And if any, I'm going to ask at this point, if anyone's got any questions, I'm going to use my phone because I don't know.
Yeah, that's a smart move.
It just seems a bit safer to use. But yeah, if anyone's got any other questions, then at this point, I'm going to ask you for some questions and I'll bring them up with Evette in a moment. So please post them in the group official thread, any questions that you've got.
And I just want to throw something else also very super important out there. And the reason why, just to kind of wrap up what I was talking about, the emotional body, because it's so important what you asked there, and it was a very good question. The reason why we focus on the emotional body is because emotions can be trusted, regardless whether it's an emotional predisposition triggered from your ancestries or whether it's yours. When you start working with memories, by the fifth time that you've repeated a memory, 50% of the accuracy has changed, number one. Number two, we always struggle. We know what implicit memories are. That's when, the emotional stress, you can feel it, but you don't have conscious awareness of what it is. Now, when you work with a practitioner and you start talking about memories, or you try to think, oh, I feel like this, and someone just making one insinuation saying, well, maybe that happened. Maybe you were abused by, someone, if you would feel like that, because as an adult, you're interpreting a situation that you felt as a child. So now you're putting a completely different intellectual spin on something that a child with a very basic mind experienced and saw. And you make up this entire story, or someone else making a suggestion, and you plug that suggestion into the emotion, because when we are in a state of unresourcefulness, when we feel powerless and we don't understand what's going on, we are at our most vulnerable, because all that we want is an answer. And any plausible answer will be accepted. And now you have a false memory. I cannot tell you how many people I've worked with that spent thousands of dollars trying to heal something that never happened. The emotional body never lies.
So I'm just going to dive into that then. So how would someone know if it's I'm going to call it a false memory? I don't know what term you would use.
Yeah.
How would they know if it's a false memory? Because they've been sort of had someone else inject some sort of, had some sort of intervention that's meant that they now have this warped view. So I'm curious to know, how would someone know that?
That's the problem. You don't always know that. You don't always know that. And that is why when someone comes to me and they tell me what their problems, I give them a 2-minute limit to tell me what the issue is. I don't want to hear too much of the story. I really don't. Yeah. I want to know, how do you feel? Number one, how does your physical body react to this emotional state that you're struggling with? And what is the instinctive responses that you feel? That's all that I need to know. Yeah. All that I need to know. I don't want to know anything more than that. Yeah, but I remember, I'm like, that I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't go there.
Don't need the story. Don't need the story. So, where I had some other questions. So again, I think, has anyone else asked questions here? Everyone's just diving in to help everyone know. Aaron said, if you have trauma imprinted into the emotional body, do you believe that you can rewrite the emotional body by creating new experiences of joy rather than releasing the trauma? Great question.
Can I answer?
Please do.
Woo, perfect. Aaron, really good question. And so here's the problem. Very insightful question, but here's the problem. What if that person has a negative association with joy. Meaning times where you really wanted to feel joy and you experience, traumatic moments, or you were made to feel guilty or punished in times when you really truly felt happy when everyone else was suffering. So now you're trying to achieve a state of mind that you actually have a negative association with firstly. So let's say hypothetically that you don't. Let's say you really have a positive association with joy. It was always been a good experience for you. What's happening now here is that rewrite creating experiences of joy. The trauma release that happens only happens when the emotions and the instinctive responses have been dissociated from each other, the ones that's constantly been firing off, because they are the ones that's locking and holding the trauma in place. So joy is a symptom. That's an expression, that's an experience. So what you want is to go back to a natural state of beingness. And in order to achieve that, it's important to pull the pain points that's constantly taking you away from the state of natural harmony of beingness. Because for trauma to be released, certain level of awareness is needed, because it is through the awareness, it's through the electromagnetic field and the intention of knowing where, what, and how the trauma is stored that the body actually finally releases that. Because joy does not release and heal the instinctive responses that's locked in, that's frozen. It doesn't release the cellular memories in the atomic nervous system that is overloaded. It doesn't release the negative thoughts that's constantly being reinforced in the neural pathways. I completely get where you're coming from that angle, but it's very important to understand that. Let me explain. I'm actually going to give you a fun example. So everyone here listening, and Will, I know you as well. I'm sure that you sometimes, you saw someone and you can feel that they're really angry or they're very sad, but you can't see their face to prove that, but you feel it, right? Have you experienced that?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Yeah. Now, the reason why is that this person is so focused on a specific negative thought that is generating all these negative emotions, and they're energizing it so much that the electromagnetic field is just radiating only that. So it's very intense, it's very amplified, and you can feel that. Now, imagine that person with that same level of intensity, focused on healing, focused on release, focused on change work, knowing where and how to direct their thoughts to in the biological body to release. What do you think is going to happen? You are going to respond, whether you are giving your cooperation or not. I've sat in countries with translators where I would say to the translator, don't tell this person what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. Just translate to me what's the problem. Where in their body do they feel it? Perfect. Now stop translating. And I'm just talking to this person. I'm having a full-blown conversation as if though they're now supposed to understand what I'm saying, and they're just sitting and giving me a blank stare. And I will go quiet for 2 to 3 minutes, connect, send out the electromagnetic fields, knowing where, what, and how to connect. And their body responds. And I will tell the translator, okay, I'm done. Ask the person to come back. How do you feel? What were we working on again? Oh, perfect. That's the perfect answer. Right? So it's like language is not really needed, because the electromagnetic field is doing that. It is your ability to focus, to know what you're doing and where and how you're projecting that, because we treat the body like it's stupid, but it's not. It just needs structure. It needs structure. That's all that it needs. But it needs consistency and structure.
I heard, and I love this. Years ago, I heard an example of saying that the body, and at the time I was only thinking about the physical body, but actually I can understand how this would be the case for the emotional body as well. Now, sort of hearing what you're saying, is it's like having a blueprint to build a house, and they've got the blueprint, and they've got the bricks, but they can only follow the blueprint. So for as long as they have that blueprint, it doesn't matter. They can build the house, knock it down, get the bricks again. They're building the same house over and over again. No matter what you knock down, you're building the same house. Whereas when you've got a different blueprint, even with those bricks, you can build a whole new house. And that's kind of that's sort of a very simple and sort of analogy I'll use, a metaphor I use for what you're saying there, is that's how you completely change. You use.
Thank you for sharing
I love
that.
Absolutely. Aaron, hopefully that's answered your question. And there's a few other questions, but there's a couple that I had here that I want to make sure that that we ask. What do you call? So obviously the book's called Metaphysical Anatomy. I understand that a lot of it's based around metaphysics and obviously there's certain work that you do. What do you call that work? Do you have a label for it?
Rapid Growth Metaphysical Anatomy Technique. But basically it's just rapid growth.
Rapid growth. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. What's your opinion of Western, I'm going to call it Western medicine, so pharmaceutical medicine?
Look, everything ultimately can have its place. And this is a very volatile question in terms of answering it. I believe Western medicine can be good if it can be designed to not create more problems. If it can be designed to create and to resolve a problem that it's intended for, and have a beautiful, perfect healing as a result, and not create secondary results so that you have to keep going back, then I would give it a lot more praise. But then you also have to look back hundreds of years ago. We didn't have Western medicine. We used our backyard to heal. And there's a lot of ethnic groups out there doing it to this day. Just a certain combination of the correct vitamins. Dr. Drygaard Klinghardt is a beautiful example of that, amongst many other people who just knows the right combination to use from plants and from our soil and to heal with that. It is our disconnection to this information that's been our downfall.
Cool, thank you. I appreciate that. Right, I'm gonna see if we can. Are you okay to answer some of these other questions that the guys are? Okay. So you're breaking my rules, guys, but I'm gonna be nice tonight and you're posting them in the chat. I can say the reason I like you to post them in the group is that then when I close this webinar, then we lose all of the questions. So I like to keep them. So
why don't we just copy and paste some of them?
That's what I've started doing. Oh,
perfect.
So Anne has said, I have CFS. I'm not sure. Are you familiar? Do you know
chronic fatigue? Chronic fatigue.
Okay. And pain is locked in my back. I have tried all kinds of things over the years. Slow recovery. Have tried lots to improve understanding of clearing EM field. Sounds amazing. Can you release? Sorry. Sounds amazing that you can release it so quickly. Sorry, that's not actually a question. It's just saying that actually by
sharing,
the emotional field. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
My bad. Great question from Annie. Do you use meditation as a tool to to change the neural pathways?
Meditation has a wonderful place in my life. I start my every single day with that. However, it's not, personally for me, it's not enough to change a negative belief or to change a traumatic point. What you do is that you help to reset the body to a level of tone of how you start the day. So it's easier for the body to revert back to that nice, calm state in the moment of distress. But as we know, we have to keep meditating in order to maintain that state of mind. So anything that needs to be done repetitively in order for a positive state to be gained means that you're dealing and coping with the problem rather than actually resolving it. It's like putting a clean Band-Aid on a chronic sore rather than looking at why is the chronic sore there.
Yeah, treating.
But meditate. Sorry?
I was going to say treating a symptom, not a cause.
Yeah. But I love meditation, by the way. I'm not speaking badly of it in any way, shape, or form. It's part of my everyday life.
Cool. So hopefully that's answered your question, Annie. So Andy has said, I have an issue with my knee that when I have had an MRI scan, doctors say it looks like physical trauma that's not healing properly, although there has never been a physical trauma. I've always thought it's more emotional rather than physical and will do whatever it takes to heal it. Which of your books do I need to read to understand to heal it, please?
So what you want to do is you want to be looking at where's this for fun, like this is exactly how you should use the book. So I would highly recommend that you get the book. So you go to the table of contents.
I stand there like this. So
Right?
I'll put the link to if what I'll do about it afterwards, I'll find out from you what the best link is to use. We use one direct to your website or Amazon.
Perfect.
To use. But guys, just so you know,
Yeah.
so this book, I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't, right? But if I move that, you can just about see this book sits on that part of the shelf, and some of the clients that might be on here, you've seen me come downstairs and bring this book out with me because I just love it, absolutely love it, and I use it like a dictionary. I want to look up a word. I can't spell. I spell very badly, but thankfully there's something called Google now that I can use and spell check. Whereas with people and I love it. If someone tells me that they've got a disease, like I had a client the other day saying I'm getting really bad gout, so out it comes, out we go. Right, let's have a look. I've had all mannerisms of different clients that tell me they've got, or anyone, in fact, family members. I'm like, oh, I'm going to research into this. I'm going to find out, and it's amazing the accuracy of it. So
I actually have doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists using the book in their practices, and it's being used in universities as part of their curriculums as well. But just, Aaron, to answer your question, absolutely, it would be emotional as well. Because here's the thing, just a quick point. If a physical injury that you've had does not heal and there's pain, 100% of the time you're looking at powerlessness combined with suppressed anger 100% of the time. And here's why. Powerlessness is the final bottom state of anger. So anyone, for example, that has a lot of anger issues, you know that there's a lot of powerlessness, fear of losing control, fear of being powerless. So they make a positive association with anger, which is also the fighting instincts, which is hence why they get addicted to the anger, because they find their source of confidence and strength through that. Now, I don't feel that pattern there necessarily with you, Aaron, but what I'm saying is that there's anger that you're not suppressing. I feel you're very diplomatic, so that's probably also one of the problems. You're maybe being too polite, and it's time to explore why is the anger there, why is the powerlessness there. So looking at which need is left or right. Left is normally mom, female figure. Right side is normally dad, masculine figure, or authority figures. So it could be, are you walking in why? It's almost like formulated the question of like, where in your life are you walking in anger? In which aspect of your life, right? So it's like you have lost direction somewhere, and the way that you were moving into was not in alignment with where or what you are, even if it's an injury, because there's a reason why you hurt your knee and not your ankle, right? And that's the reason why, because psychosomatically your knee was already weakened, and that's why that part was then injured at the time of an accident, if it was an accident, for example. So you're looking at, a lot of deep suppressed anger and resentment of having to do something or moving in a direction that you don't want to move in, or something that you didn't want to do.
So
I hope that helps.
I'm just going to use this as an example to share, guys. So a lot of people don't know that I'm a third deaf in my right ear. Okay. And when I was around 2 years old, when I was 2, so I was 2 and 2 years and 8 months old. My parents found out that when I was 2 years, let me get this right. When I was 2 years and 8 months old, my parents had twins. So I was the eldest child. My parents had twins. Now, what I now know, as I grew up, when I was about 2 or 3, they found lots of cysts in my ear, my right ear, my inner ear. And then what happened was, over time, those cysts got bigger and bigger. Eventually, they ended up taking over my the bones in my ear, and I've had to have loads of ear operations. So if you look at me face on, a lot of people won't realize this until I tell them, and they can never unsee it, is it looks like I have no right ear, because they've taken out the cartilage in the back of my ear to rebuild the bones in my ear with some other substances so that I can still have some hearing in my right ear, which I'm very grateful for. Now, when I read through your book, what it is specifically is to do with household arguing, typically.
Yes. And if you combine it with the cyst section, you'll get the whole story.
Right. And then right was father. Okay. So, or authority figure. And I can imagine, knowing what I now know and knowing about my parents' situation, was that all of a sudden you've got one child, money is tight. Then all of a sudden you find out you're having twins. Lots of household arguing, lots of stress. I didn't want to hear it, particularly from my dad. Hence, I manifest what goes on here, and it's really.
And question: do you also relate more to mum?
Yeah.
because that's also why you took on a lot of her stress as well, because that's what children do.
Yeah.
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 Also masculine listening to the husband, which is also the right hand side. So that's also the resentment, and that's hence the cyst. So the hearing damage is also coming from you taking on mom's resentment.
Cool. I didn't know that part. So that's an extra addition. So yeah, cool. Thank you.
No, I just used an example because I know that you're open to it, but seeing how deep it really can go.
Yeah. But this is the point of unfolding this whole process. So right, we're already running a couple of minutes over. I've had one great question which I am going to ask, if that's okay, which I asked in the Facebook group.
We're on the roll.
And has asked as well, and I'm going to ask the question because I'm sure it's a yes or no answer. With permission, can they include your material if it's cited to you properly for university studies?
I would love for you to do that. Love for you to do that. Of course, a lot of universities do that. I would love for you to do that.
That's great.
It's an honor. Thank you, Anne.
Andy's bought your book. Like I say, guys, this for me, I put this on Facebook before to our audience event, and I said, I believe every household, a lot of households, because of their religious belief, have some sort of Bible, whatever their Bible might be. I believe every household in the world should have one of these. But anyway, that's another conversation.
Here's the fun part. Just as a last note to add there to what you were saying, Will, I'm tagging off of what you said. If you have a friend that's a non-believer, just give them that and stop trying to explain. That will do all the work. That will do all the work.
So Miriam has asked, once you know the source of the problem, so you've read the book, you've read it,
okay,
then what? Now I know the answer to this, but I'm going to allow you to share this. So
yeah, so you can just go through the healing and negative thought process if you want, or you can look at the key points where I describe then what to look at, what to start with. And if you have your own modality, perfect, jump straight into that. If you don't, you can, jump into Will's techniques, you can jump into my techniques in metaphysical anatomy, or what you can do, you can go through guidedhealingsession.com. It's a free healing session, guided 30-minute session that I talk you through. That's actually designed to go with the book. It's free, no strings attached, and just you can go through that process with whatever it is that the book or the sections brought up for you to gain clarity, but also to release it.
Amazing. So just to be really clear then, so in the book, not only does it tell you the symptom, it's got the key points of what to do next and the things to try and to look at testing. And then obviously that guidedhealingsession.com as well is fantastic. So Evette, firstly, I just want to say a huge thank you for joining us from Switzerland this evening and sort of taking your time to share with the Make It Happen community. And I know I'd love for you and I will have a conversation. It'd be great to get you coming and maybe speaking at some of our events when you're traveling over here.
Consider me there.
That'll be great when you're here. So we'll see if we can arrange the diaries and make that happen.
Yeah.
That'll be really cool. I'm sure the guys would love to hear you do that. For anyone that does, and they're like me when I first come across your work, it was like, just this is mind blowing. I need to deep dive on this. I really want to find out more. How can people find out more about you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they find out, other than buying the book, obviously, connect with you on all the socials and whatnot?
Perfect.
How can they do that? Where can they find you?
Where can they find me? Sorry, I lost you there for a minute. It was a slight jet lag there. So you can find me on metaphysicalanatomy.com. Find me on Instagram, Evette Rose 1, Evette with an E. I'm not French, I'm from South Africa. So that's EVETTE Rose with the digit 1. You can catch me on Facebook, Metaphysical Anatomy, or invite me as a friend. I also have a Facebook page, Finding Your Own Voice, for people who are struggling with abuse and domestic violence as well. So a lot of fun, great movements happening there. So link with me and connect. Love connecting.
Once we finish, guys, I'll put all of those into the group again, so everyone's got access to everything. Once again, I just want to say a huge thank you. You've given a tremendous value. I look forward to connecting again very soon, and we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Thank you, everyone, for speaking live with us this evening. And for those of you that are watching this on replay, I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you very soon. Until next time, make it happen.
Bye, everyone.
All right, let's It will happen in a moment. There we go.
And 3, 2,